This is a Vod review for GHFGHF7 on Garen top lane. Our main focus this game, honestly, even though the main focus you kind of wanted was your late game and kind of, what happened, it's pretty straightforward what happened here in your mid-late game. So I'm going to spend a little more time focusing on your early mid decision making, your itemization, and we're going to go over runes here at the beginning as well real quick. So all of that should hopefully build up to giving you kind of a direction in your late game. And we'll go over that a little as well. So first off, for runes, I'm pretty okay with your runes right now. I just don't like Scorch that much. It ends up not generating a ton of damage. I like a lot of other things. I especially like Gathering Storm. But other than that, generally, your runes are pretty much the same. The only other rune page I actually really like is going Precision second. You'll generate health instead on the second tree, and you'll get Triumph and then Coup de Grace. Extra execute damage and everything, right? I like that a lot better. I used to get full health on here anyways. But yeah, either or, the celerity is really good for movement speed. You're generally running the right runes. The only one maybe to swap out is Demolish, because you are currently running Bone Plate, which is a lot more geared towards sustained fights, which against tanks, it isn't the worst thing ever. But Demolish helps you take towers quicker, and you also only run Ignite, and the entire goal of Ignite in top lane is to snowball the lane into kind of becoming an unstoppable top laner, and it's really rough because there are some top laners that you're just not going to be able to get away with it, depending on your matchup. So if it's a really bad matchup for you, if it's a ranged champion, you can't do it very well, especially Gnar. Gnar actually bullies Garen pretty hard. Then you can actually run TP instead, and it'll help a lot better. And you can kind of see your counters here. You can pull up a bigger list on op.gg if you really want to look into it too much. Other than that, you actually play really well with Ignite in this game, so when started here, pretty straightforward. You go Doran Shield, single potion for sustain. We're kind of prioritizing general sustain, with our runes and our masteries, so it makes sense. Your lane trades are going to be pretty straightforward here. You do them pretty appropriately. You trade on him, then you cut into brush to cut vision on minions. The only thing I'm a little worried about is you actually end up letting Nasus push into you a little bit early, so he gets a level 2 advantage, which ends up not mattering much, but the way you trade cycle here makes a lot of sense. Q into him, then E into him. So the big thing that you're just not paying attention to, and this happens throughout the game, so jungle ganks happen. I'll give you vision on everyone, but jungle ganks happen at 240 to 250 right now. If they go bottom buff, wolf, top buff, and that's exactly what Jax did, and then he just pathed up top. And so if you want to play this kind of aggressive style Garen top lane, or, any aggressive top laner, it's really, really important to get a ward in river or in tri, depending on where you are pushed in the lane. If the lane's pretty even, you should be able to weasel down here and get a ward into river pretty quickly. And then if you're pushed in a little bit like you are here, you can come back and then drop a ward in tri brush instead. So you look to all in, and had Jax not shown up, you could have punished. Really good flash, though. Ends up totally negating that Jax flash. Thankfully, your jungler was here to kind of counter. And then, because we prioritized a bunch of sustain, we just kind of, chill here. Which is pretty okay. You try to shove the wave. So here is a really, really kind of big mistake, I think, because you're not running TP. You really have to take every advantage you can to back. And I know you don't have the most gold ever, right? Only 500 gold. But you can get like tier 1 boots or like a longsword and potions. You can get a little bit, and you just kind of have to take backs where you can, because Nasus just TP'd back. And he's got the tier 1 boots. Had you backed immediately after it crashed, would have been fine. But it ends up kind of playing out all right. You look to trade some. And again, like right here is another opportunity. You see Nasus freezing here. Most of it already crashed in a tower. The waves are going to meet, so this is going to push into you just because of Nasus autoing and then queuing to last hit and all that. So this is another opportunity to back, which you don't take. Again, good trades in general. You end up prioritizing trying to shove again. You kind of do it like a hybrid of trying to push and trade. And we don't really, like, right, we don't really give a shit what's happening elsewhere on the map. The only thing we care about is whenever Jack shows up on the map, which he just showed up bot, which lets you know you can go really, really aggressive. And again, here, you're shoving to crash the wave to back, and then you kind of just bail on it again to shove. So at this point, definite big disadvantage, like you have the back here, because Nasus actually has spent his money and you haven't spent yours, so technically he's got an advantage in lane when he gets back here, besides the level. If he respects your level 6, then this should be pretty punishable, because you just end up not backing until you kill him. He just overcommits to trying to pick up farm, and you end up just diving him here pretty soon. Oh no, you're doing a backing. That's right. You also got Ninja Tabi, which is a little weird to me. Phage basically gives you the move speed, and it gives you a little more aggressiveness. And you're already going to build Black Cleaver anyways. So I'm a little confused why you're going Tabi. Generally, you grab Tabi into really aggressive matchups. Camille, Fiora, anyone like Gnar, potentially. Anyone super, super auto attack reliant. Generally, you're not grabbing it in an Nasus. Generally, especially when you have control in the lane, especially like you feel like you do right now, and you definitely have at least a little bit, you want to kind of build a little more aggressively. I think Phage would have been a really good buy here. But you come back into lane. This you have to be really careful about. And if you end up committing to an all-in here, it can be really, really bad. Because each of these casters, 29 damage. They're going to do about 20 damage un-auto to you. Cannon's going to do about 35. And so when you commit inside a mini-wave, it's just a lot of damage. Because if you notice, you are playing Garen, but you end up taking almost 200 damage from minions with all your damage reduction and all that. And you're still end up tanking him just a little here. Something just to think about. You know you've kind of got a lead on Nasus here. Yep. Pretty straightforward. That's literally exactly what you have to do with Ignite. So most of your early game here generally is pretty clean except for overstays. Again, we're sitting on 11-20. If you want to stay for Phage, but then back, you really need to kind of hit your power spikes. And these power spikes are like, Phage is always a really big power spike for most top laners. Tabi, if you're in an aggressive matchup, which is really auto attack reliant. Finishing like Black Cleaver, things like that. Generally all very, very good things. Again, we're sitting on a Warning Trinket. Not dropping any vision here. Not dropping a ward in river just to make sure Jax doesn't sneak up on you. Or if he does, you can prep and try to like all in him instead of Nasus because he's a lot squishier. And you do finally do it here. It's just heavily delayed. Anytime you're going for any sort of aggression like this, you really have to make sure you always have vision in river. Or else it can get punished. Which is kind of rough. And I know we see Jax down here right now, but it's just a good habit to build to just always ward. Again, not really a lot to say here. Like, you just trade on him. You just kill him again. Nothing really special. If you shove, you back, you buy. You get Phage and Kindle Gem. You get back to lane. So at this point, you really, really, really want to prioritize starting to drop tower. Normally, maybe you can get away with it at like 9 minutes if you get jungle gank. Without a jungle gank, it's a little harder to drop. But you're definitely in a position where you can start looking to chunk tower out, and you don't have Sunfire, which I'll kind of talk about your Sunfire buy later. Yeah, you just run him down again. It's exactly what you want to do. So your general early game here is, as long as you get a lead, it's pretty good. I'm a big fan of stealing the blue. I'm not a big fan of continuing to counter jungle, especially when you see people on map, and you have the ability to pressure tower. Again, objectives are more important than stealing a little bit of enemy jungle farm, right? Because now you're just letting Nasus Q farm with a wave that's frozen right here. You're not really pressuring anything, which is kind of like your big goal. Jack's kind of potatoes. It almost dies to you guys. And now you try to pressure here later when you don't have a minion wave, when you did before. And so it's just a little, you know, like you're staring bot here. And again, like your priority literally is just like pay attention to where people are on the map. You know, mid lane's not here. We don't know where he is. We know Kasai just died bot lane. We know Nass is top. We know Jax got chunked. So like we know it's generally pretty safe to pressure. And so this is where you back at Black Cleaver and start tending towards Black Cleaver buy. So here, again, really, really important. We've got another Trinket Ward up. Again, whenever you're trying to pressure, really important because you're playing more of a split style than you are playing like a group and team fight kind of thing. And so you generally need to get a ward up at least right here. And you know, the ideal is you get a ward all the way down here and then a ward all the way over here to check both entrances. You can weasel pink in right here and generally catch most shit that goes on here. If you get the 2 wards here, then it'll catch almost anyone trying to come and get aggressive on you. That way, you can start pressuring the tower. If anyone tries to rotate, you can see them rotate, and then you can just bail. Really, really important to get that vision down when you want to play this split push style. Because you are definitely ahead enough that you can definitely get away with it. And so, the reason I'm not a big fan of this Sunfire cape buy is you're already not struggling with wave clear. And so it just doesn't make a lot of sense, at least to me. Because Sunfire is bought for 2 things. For armor and wave clear. And you're paying a lot of money for the wave clear, which you don't need. And a lot of different builds you can go is you could go like Sterak's Thornmail, Deadman Sterak's. I mean, a lot of it just generally, like, I'm a big fan of Sterak's on Garen. Into really anything besides Sunfire. Because Sunfire forces you to pull aggro whenever someone gets a right. If you're trying to take tower on Nasus and then he walks up to you, which happens multiple times this game, it forces you to pull aggro from tower, and then you kind of just have to back up. And then, again, you could go, like, you could pick up a Warmogs, which is pretty good. You could pick up a Yomu's, which is another, like, normally I don't generally recommend super aggressive items, but Yomu's is actually super good on Garen just for, like, that pop of move speed and a little bit of damage. I generally don't recommend going, like, full glass cannon, though. But, like, Moranu and Sterak, Stormmill, Warmogs, Yomu's Ghostblade, all of those are kind of better than a Sunfire buy, especially if you're trying to split. You're paying a lot of money for that wave clear, which you don't generally use. So you do try to group here. Ends up going alright. You guys pick him. You get a little too aggressive here and end up kind of just wasting flash, which is kind of unfortunate. But here, again, instead of managing this minion wave and getting it pushing to pressure an objective, you're kind of just counter jungling again. It's not really doing a whole lot, which is really unfortunate because, again, our whole goal, like, just tons of pressure. And then because you don't have the wards, because you aren't really paying attention to, oh no, no one is on the map, you end up getting picked here. Which is really rough because, right, we know we can 1v1 anyone. We're big man on campus. Unfortunately, we can't, like, 1v3. You do end up getting the Jax, but you end up getting picked up on the back end, and your shutdown's worth a lot of money, right? Because you're worth 350 gold shutdown plus 300 kills, so you're worth 750 plus assist gold. Like, you're worth a ton of gold. As if you, I just want to point out, right when you get picked here, they get 1.1k off of your death. And so when you're on a spree like you're on, you have to be really, really careful about dying because you're worth so much more than a single kill, because normally people only think 300 gold. Like I said, you were worth 1100 there for that shutdown, so you be really careful. So we go back to split pushing here again. Really, really important to prioritize actually pressuring tower and, you know, just pressuring objectives instead of just sitting here. So here's where the Sunfire kind of backfires. Because you get in here, and he walks up to you, and your Sunfire ticks on him, and you take a tower shot, and you've got the regen to take a tower shot or two. It's no big deal, but again, we're paying for a lot of stats that we're basically not using. We're paying for a lot of AoE wave clear that we don't need. do like the fact that you end up getting away here. It's basically what you want to do, right? You killed one guy, you pulled another top, and you're just generating tons of pressure. Now, finally, you're working on this tower. So you guys at this point are like crazy far ahead, and there's really not a whole lot of reason to overcommit to what you guys are doing. If we look at resources available, your ult's down, Kazakh's, I don't know what in the hell it's showing for his ult's up, ult down, Vane's ult's down, Alistar's ult's down. Basically, you guys have Kazakh's ult and nothing else. You guys are down a ton of summoners. You guys are in their base, under their towers. This inhib is totally free. And you guys end up committing for this tower. And you guys are just positioned super far forward. Just take one bad team fight. So it's good to really play just really... When you've got a lead like this, it's really good to try to play kind of more conservative. In terms of like, okay, we just got one inhib. We don't really need to greed for a second one. It's not like a situation where we're, you know, where they are, where they're 10k, 13k down. And they desperately need some crazy-ass fight to get back in the game. That's basically exactly what happens with them. Also, I understand you want to pick the low person, but I'm going to play this fight in slow motion for you. I don't know that trying to commit to the Nami here is going to do that much for you, right? Because, like, what happens if you kill Nami? Not a whole lot. And so, this is just kind of a focus thing. Generally, you kind of want to try to focus any of the carries. The only time you really focus supports is if they really, really overstep and your team kind of, you know, just quick pick them. Or if they miss position really heavy and kind of get caught out. That kind of thing is totally okay. But trying to actually focus a support in a team fight outside of Soraka is generally a pretty bad idea. So there's not really a lot to say about this. They kind of just get Baron. Your Xerath tries here. Does a pretty good job of doing a lot of poke. You back, you buy. The adaptive helm buy, again, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. Are you getting hit repetitively with a ton of magic damage? Jack's ult, every 3 auto attacks, you get hit by some magic damage. So it's cutting down 1 out of every 3 of Jack's auto attacks. He went Cinder Hulk, so he doesn't have Blood Razor to chunk you a lot. There, Kasai doesn't have Ginsu's Rage Blade yet. Even when she doesn't do a whole lot of magic damage. It's a lot of physical. It all gets converted to physical. And then Lux, the only thing you're getting hit repetitively by is her passive twice on a full combo, in theory. Like, if she does it completely appropriately. And so that just kind of ends up losing a lot of Adaptive Helm's efficiency, again. Because we're paying a lot of money for a passive that we're not actually using. And so this could be, again, a Spirit Visage if we really need MR. Gargoyle's Stone Plate if we want just flat health. We could get Stacks if we don't have it yet. Warmogs if we don't have it yet. Because a lot of being a tank against AP carries is just surviving the burst, and then they don't really do jack shit to you. So you generally don't need a ton of MR. So I would have liked to have seen a Spirit Visage instead. Adaptive Helm is more for like Cassio, for like Varus or Kog'Maw who go Ginsu's Rage Blade because they have a lot of other magic damage in kit that can really help. Other than that, generally it's Spirit Visage, Gargoyle Stone Plate, that kind of thing. So you do group here finally. And the big thing, here's where running the Ignite really bites you in the ass, because you try to group and Nasus is just splitting because Nasus has TP. So if shit hits the fan really, really badly, Nasus can just TP to the team, whereas you have to be with the team. So if you're in this situation, if you want to keep running Ignite, you always have to match the TP player that's trying to split on you, and you have to make sure that they can't TP into a fight. Which, again, if you have a lead, which you should because you're running Ignite, it's all about just like pushing this wave up really, really hard and then pressuring in him. Or, you know, trying to just fight. Oh, that was bright. You end up trying to, like, commit to tower here. You got half commit to tower and end up, really unfortunate ult here, actually, because if you held that ult, you maybe could have executed Kasai there. And then your team went to go try to deal with the Nasus, and Kha'Zix actually died to deal with it, I think. Your Vayne gets picked for sure. Oh, no, he doesn't. He just ends up getting shoved out here. Oh, no, yeah, he did die here. Okay. Super confused there. So Kha'Zix died to deal with the Nasus and you guys lose your Vayne. And so if you notice, like a ton of your gold leads dissipated, but you guys have survived the Baron. You guys still have a gold lead. And so a lot of this is just like grouping and team fighting. And you end up making it kind of really rough for your team. You and Alistar. Your Kha'Zix is a shit tier build. So right here, I would say is definitely the biggest repetitive mistake you make in where you guys are not grouped as 5, right? Kha'Zix is down here kind of far away. Bane's all the way in another lane. And then you try to walk up on the Nasus here. And again, we're not really paying attention to map. If we just see Nasus and no one else, it's kind of really good to make a general assumption that his team is with him. You can't pick Nasus very quickly. If this is like an 80, you know, if this is Kasai who's marked, maybe, or I say marked, who's the, I'm trying to remember. Villain. It's the villain. If the villain's there and they're squishy, maybe you can pick them, but this is a tank you're trying to just, like, pick. And so because you walk up, Alistar walks up, and you guys end up both getting picked here. Alistar ends up ulting really late, which is unfortunate. And so this is kind of what happens where there's a full 5-man team that dogpiles you, and you just kind of end up dying. And, you know, it's a good try from your team to pick Kasai, but again, Vayne's not with you. Oh no. If she just ran straight at the inhib, something maybe could have happened, but ends up barely not getting it, which is just super rough. And this happens multiple times, and then this kind of just leads to the end of game. Because you guys end up never really grouping and fighting appropriately. Nasus is starting to turn on. He's got Triforce and 40% CDR. Pfft, cheeky smite away. Again, you're off on the side, kind of on your own, and you get 4-man dogpiled. And 2 of your team end up getting picked because they come over to try to help you. And so if in the late game you're really confused, you're not sure what to do, you feel like you have to group on your team. Like actually stay with your team. Don't go for these crazy picks. Wait for 5 people to group to really look for these fights. Because that's what really just bites you in the ass here again and again and again. And a lot of that can also be like actual pinging on map. You know, actually like on my way ping, back ping, that kind of thing. Not really a whole lot more to go over here. You are finally looking for Randuin's. Kasai did kind of go crit, but went Ginsu's. Weird build. Again, you guys might just have them a little too far ahead at this point. You really have to work front and back, and so does Alistar. So this is kind of really unfortunate that Alistar looks for like a hardcore dive. And so here, really, really important for you to try to peel for your backline. You're not some sort of crit, you know, you definitely haven't itemized glass cannoning enough to go just like pick a carry or anything like that. So it's really important to just work front to back in fights. And he kind of just got picked. Jax made a good play. He flashed on him with a stun. Really, really rough to manage that. But in general, you want to be like the leadmost person in a fight. And you don't want to try to dive like you've been doing, right? Because every time we've tried to dive, it's just been super bad. You really kind of want to stay in the front in between you and the enemy team. And just kind of stay in between that kind of zone. So they end up getting an inhib. You guys do end up taking one really good fight here, which almost turns the game. Part of it, right, is just the Kasai pick. You guys just rock him. Then take another Drake. You guys kind of just run up, take an inhib. Just because, let's see. Take another inhib, and then, yeah, because Nasus is turning on finally. It's really rough for you. You know, you're at the point where he's got, oh, I'm sorry, it's Jax you're trying to fight. Jax is turning on because he's got, you know, Triforce, Mama, Mortius, Rand, you know, he's full build. You really can't do anything versus Nasus either, because he's really turning on as well. Not sure how many stacks he's got, but... you guys end up stalling, and then you have one more good fight here, and just completely throw it. And I think part of it is, their team's really heavy into scaling. Nasus, Jax, and Kasai all scale really well in a late game, where you guys have Vayne and Xerath, so it makes it pretty hard for you guys to actually win this game. It's late in the game. And a lot of that just comes from actually, like, converting your lead into a finished win and playing a little safer, like I said earlier. So you guys dance around here for a little bit. Again, you're kind of just, like, in on 5 of them and just kind of blow up and die. So unfortunate, because you guys almost get this. So you guys stop my Baron. Okay, never mind. It's one more fight further. This game goes on for a really long time. I would have liked to have seen you guys stall a little longer to, like, let Super just build up pressure earlier. Now Baron's down. You guys get Baron. Unfortunately, Vayne kind of just doesn't get the peel she needs here, right? Jax gets on her. Ends up popping random GA, which is really good. And then you're kind of like over here off. Again, I want to see you in between your carries and the enemy team. I don't want to see you kind of off to the side again, where you're kind of just allowed to get dogpiled and die. And so a lot of this comes down to you, again, staying over here instead of just bailing. You have to, as a frontliner, you have to stay with your team. So, clean early game, need to warm up a little more, need to pay attention to a little more jungle pressure, you know, if they can come, when they can come. Clean up your itemization a little bit, maybe work on your runes just a little bit, and then just general late game. Split push or group, do one or the other, but do it appropriately. If you split push, make sure to ward, pay attention to the map. And then when you group, even then, make sure to pay attention to the map, where enemy champions are, and don't go for, like, these silly, try to pick, like, you know, try to just, like, put damage down on, like, a Nasus mid, you know, a super tank mid. You're not a poke champion. You don't really need to look for this poke. You really just need to kind of be that frontline beefcake that sits in between your carries and the enemy carries. That way the enemy carries cannot just get onto yours and just kill your guy, or the enemy frontline can't just get on your carries completely unopposed and just kill them. So hopefully this helps. If you have any questions, feel free to message me on LOL Coaching. Hopefully that helps, sir.